What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All NBA Show, part of the All City Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, we had some fraudulent performances in the NBA last night. I don't know if I'd call them good games. I don't know what I would call them, but some fraudulent performances in the association last night.
One of the weirdest nights we've had all year, and I can't wait to dive into some of these games because some of it just makes no sense whatsoever. When you first understand, like, just getting the score, you're kind of like, wow, really? And then you go and actually watch the game, and you can't believe what you're watching in some of these cases. So let's dive in.
Let's definitely dive in. We're going to talk about this Pacers-Clippers game up front because it provides conversation on both teams. Very fascinating from both ends, including Tyrese Haliburton, who's in a little bit of a slump, but got the win last night. The Clippers, who are in a major slump and look lifeless. We're going to talk about the Suns, the nonchalant Suns falling to the Wemby-less Spurs. And we're going to talk about the Celtics with another fourth quarter collapse and what it means for them, if anything, or maybe it doesn't mean anything. We'll talk about that as well at the end. Jontay Porter, our first NBA gambling, controversy, so to speak. We're going to get into all that. But first, we are presented by DraftKings. All NBA is sponsored by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings, all they have to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. All right, Legs, let's get into it. Pacers get the win 133-116 in Los Angeles last night against the Clippers. The Clippers have looked this way for a while. We keep expecting them to snap out of it, to play with more urgency, connectiveness, excitement, enthusiasm. They were none of those things last night. They were lifeless in what turned out to be a blowout loss that might have even been worse than what the score said. So what stood out to you about this game?
Well, they were okay offensively, nothing great, but that's not certainly, you look at the way some of their best players played and just their efficiency overall as a team. That's not really the reason you lose the game. Shoot 54% from the three. Now, they were anemic from the three-point line, but they have nights like that. They're not a super high-volume three-point shooting team. Only made 6 threes, but, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, pretty efficient nights, 23 for 36 between them. So you're looking at this and say, well, how does it? Norman Powell has a good night, 8 for 13, 22 points. Like that's a good Norman Powell night. It was the other end of the floor, and there's just lack of regard. And they played small lineups in this game quite a bit, both halves, that were absolutely atrocious. And it's look, they've got 3 serviceable bigs, but they went small with, when I say small, Amir Coffey as the 5th guy with like 3 Hall of Famers, take your pick of the 4, and then Norman Powell. Like that was the lineup they were going with for some stretches, and they couldn't stop anybody. And just the lack of anticipation defensively was glaring to me on simple action, like give and go type stuff where the Pacers just pass to the wing and cut down the lane and get it right back and lay it in, and nobody on the weak side even thinking about being off to the ball. Just basic stuff that you go over that all good teams practice, and it becomes part of like your identity when you're playing really well defensively, what it looks like, guys on a string, right? And that's what you look at when you see good defensive teams. And there's no reason for the Clippers to look like this because from a personnel standpoint, they've got more than enough. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, they are both guys that are capable of being lockdown type defenders. Norman Powell is a good defender. Terrence Mann is a really good defender. James Harden is not. Zubac is not. I get it, but I just listed 4 guys that are. Westbrook even is not a great defender, but man, the guy gives you constant energy. So for them to be this bad defensively in a period of time, by the way, we're 10-12 in 22 games, Adam. This isn't small sample size, man. This is a month and a half of like looking like this. And what's really hard to figure out, other than what I just alluded to, the defensive effort, go back and look at their numbers of like their best players. Because sometimes when you see a team go through a stretch without playing well, you go and look, well, no wonder. Like this guy's shooting 38% over the last 10 games and he's an important player. Like stuff like that matters incrementally. But you look at Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. their numbers haven't really declined, and they're doing it efficiently over this entire period of time. Now, James Harden, he's had a downtick. There's no question. Has not played as well offensively, and Norman Powell is like on a slight downward slope over the course of this losing streak that we're talking about here, where they haven't played well. And so it's hard to pinpoint other than just flat out effort and caring more possession by possession. And when you play a team like Indiana, they're counting on that. If you want to come out there and not touch anybody, not run back in transition, the number of score after score opportunities that the Pacers got when they were scored upon and they got something quick at the other end of the floor, which is 100% concentration and effort to get back and get in front of the ball. Like when you play a team like Indiana and this is your approach, this is what you get. 133 points you give up at home on a night when your guys play pretty well, the guys that you need to. So they're a mess right now. There's no other way to describe it. The Clippers are a mess. And I don't know if they've got enough time here of the next 11 games to make us believe that they've got this figured out, but it's definitely something you got to keep watching.
If I were to romanticize this problem, Legs, that's going on with the Clippers, and to a lesser extent, or maybe to the same extent, actually, the Phoenix Suns, I would say that it is a proof of concept that there's more to basketball than just your ability to get buckets. You know, there's more to that. Yeah. There's the connectedness between the teammates. There's what's the emphasis? What is your identity? Do you have multiple identities you can fall back on given the circumstance? And the Clippers don't seem to have that right now, any of those things other than the bucket getting part, because to your point, they are accomplishing the part of the game that they are valuing, their ability to score, their ability to, okay, give me the ball in the elbow. Their guys are still doing a good job of that. But transition defense, secondary break defense, not even fast break defense, but just like you said, after a make, did we get back and match up? Those types of things are habits. Those are culture and identity that you build throughout the course of the season, or you're supposed to. And the Clippers made a nice run in the middle of the year. But sometimes if you're making a nice run, but there isn't that foundation of, okay, here's how we handle these situations, then you're susceptible to falling into these long slumps. And that, when I look at the contenders around the league, I think one of the ways you should analyze them and the questions you should ask is, can they win multiple ways? The Clippers, can they win in a shootout? Okay, yeah, they have the talent for it. Can they win if it has to get ugly and what you're required on is just effort? Can they win an effort game where both teams are off, everything's ugly, no fouls are being called? Can they win an effort game? The Clippers can't do that. Can they win an execution game? I don't think they've proven to be able to do that. So now you're looking at it and saying, okay, they can dominate certain types of games when the texture of the game takes a certain personality. But at this very moment, they do not seem even interested in trying to learn or grow into a team that can win an execution battle or a hustle battle.
Well, I'm going to repeat something I said this morning on TV, and I see one of our guests here in the chat must have heard it because they're saying what I said about lack of identity. To me, that's a phrase that's a cop-out. It's a euphemism for lack of playing hard. That's what it is. If you think about teams that we talk about having an identity, what we're really saying is they compete, they battle. That is their identity. Unless you are one of these teams that, like, you only are going to do it one way in terms of like putting up big numbers, right? And then that's your identity. Okay, this is how we're going to win. We're going to put up 130 points a game, playing the fastest pace in the league. Okay, that's one thing. For the most part, there are very few teams fall into that category. For the most part, what we're talking about when we talk about teams having identity and like heat culture, what you're really saying is, man, they compete every night. They show up. They battle. That's all you're really describing. And it's the same thing with this identity stuff. And Harden saying they don't have it. And actually, Tyronn Lue is the one that hit it on the head. Yeah. He didn't say identity. You know the word he used? Soft. He used the word soft. There's no better description than what the Clippers are doing right now on the defensive end of the floor. And I guess they think that there will be an adrenaline gear that will kick in for them when they get into, because look, if you just look at what they have and start checking things that you need, they've got a lot of those things. They really do, man. They've got depth. They've got versatile players. They've got certainly more than enough firepower. They've got a championship coach. They've got a lot of what you need. It comes down to like, how bad do you want this to happen? And right now, it doesn't look like that's something that they're questioning themselves about very much. And so we're just going to wait and see. Do they have the adrenaline gear for a veteran team to get into a series and then it kicks in where they're really going to compete possession by possession, action by action, be there, communicate, connect with each other, have a scheme, and then most importantly, have the effort to give you multiple defensive effort on the same play.
Yeah.
That's what we're not seeing out of them. And that to me is what we're talking about. Lack of identity just means play harder. That's all that means. And that's what Tyronn Lue's alluding to.
I mean, I agree with you that I think it means that. I think it means a lot of those things that are, quote unquote, intangible. That's when we say identity. It's those things like playing hard and connectedness. But let me go to the word Tyronn Lue used because it's so important. Soft. I think soft is one of, if not the worst thing a coach can say about his team. And I don't mean that as in he shouldn't have said it. He said it because it's real. Like, you have to be sure of your team to say that. You can't just throw that one from the hip. I think with how the Clippers are playing, it's like, I have to say it because it's the truth. But to me, soft, I think players would rather be called selfish or dumb or any other of these negative traits. Soft might be the single worst one.
Yeah, there's only one word worse. Only one word in team sports. Quit. That's that's the only word. And every now and then you'll hear a coach use that, right? And that's like, man, this is rock bottom if a coach says that. Soft is one step above quit. They're very close, but you're right. They would absolutely rather be called selfish or dumb or whatever. Use any word you want to use to describe them in a negative way. But when you start calling teams soft, you're really challenging guys' competitiveness. And all these people should be alphas. You make it to this level as an athlete, you should. And they are, and they've shown that they can be. Right now, they're not. It's that simple. And teams are showing up to play them knowing they can get into a rhythm against them because they're not going to be impeded in any way. If they just show up and play harder than the Clippers, you got a great chance. And right now, that's not that hard to pull off because of what they look like over this period of time. It's amazing the turn that it took because we were wondering when they got Harden, they were like, whatever, 1-5 or whatever it was in the beginning. You're like, okay, they got to figure this out. Then they got red hot. And I'm going, wow. Like, Harden looks great. They look great. They can do it on both ends of the floor. It looked like the Clippers might be that team. Because everybody else had question marks besides Denver. Everybody had question marks in the West. I thought, hey, the Clippers are the team that's going to grab this open space. Like, who's going to challenge the Nuggets? It looked like the Clippers. Right. That was 6 weeks ago when we were thinking that. And now it's been a 10-12 stretch. And some of these are just so ugly to watch at how easy it is for other teams. It's glaring. It really is.
It really is glaring. Is there a person, one of the things when we talk throughout the year about leadership and these intangible things, I know a lot of fans can get turned off by that talk because it's hard. There's a lot of projection when you're talking about the leader behind closed doors. But at the same time, it's pretty clear when a team is lacking leadership or has flimsy leadership. Who is the Clippers' guy to kind of get to? Because if I point out two guys that stood out to me, Kawhi Leonard, one who can have this up and down sort of energy and effort level. He can float in games. But I think James Harden is the bigger one who, when you talk about defense, he's one of the guys you're talking about, transition defense. How committed was he to it last night? Not very committed. Those two guys. But here's the thing. Who's the leader of this team that gets those guys back, that goes into the locker room now or goes into the rest of the season and says, we got 10 games, guys. Here's what we got to do. Who is that guy? Who does it need to be and who should it be?
Great question. And I think the fact that you're asking it is a problem. And let's just look at these guys from a personality standpoint. You think it's Kawhi? Kawhi, his MO is similar to a guy like Kevin Durant. I think I show up every night. I'm ready. And especially when he's healthy. Yeah. When he's not healthy, he kind of just disappears because he's not saying a whole lot and he's not playing. At least when he's playing, even though he's not a real talkative guy, he's not going to command huddles. He's not going to say a whole lot during halftime or whatever it may be. He's not going to hold a team meeting. It's not what he's going to do. He's going to show up every night, be prepared to play, be excellent, be efficient, play hard, compete defensively. That's his way to lead. Sometimes it takes more than that. It's not Paul George, man. I think he's cool and smooth and all those things. That's not his MO. That's not his personality. Russell Westbrook, I think, is a guy that could be, but I don't think necessarily at this stage of his career that's something that he wants to do either, because he still wants to be a guy that wants to be out there for 35 minutes just doing his thing. And James Harden, I don't think that's ever been his specialty. James Harden is very much living in a bubble about how he's going to play and getting his mind right and whatnot. So I think it's a great question. PJ Tucker could be a guy that could help in that regard, but he's been completely out of the rotation. And now he's playing a little bit more now. But he was literally sitting over there collecting dust for a long period of time. Very hard when you don't have an impact on the court to have a voice in the locker room that resonates. So I think it's a fair question, man. How do they get out of this, Adam? That's the question. How do they turn this around with 11 games to go? And let me see real quick. I didn't look where they're at now relative to the standings. So the Clippers are now 5th place.
Yeah, they fell behind New Orleans.
2 games up at Dallas for 7.
Oh, man. Can you imagine them falling that far? It would be wild. I mean, it is possible.
Well, Dallas is red hot. The Kings have played pretty well over a stretch. I haven't looked at the Clippers' schedule the rest of the way, and that has a lot to do with this. They got a 4-game road trip coming up: Philly, Orlando, Charlotte, Sacramento. Right? That's a semi-hard road trip. Nothing crazy. Come home, Denver, Utah, Cleveland. A couple of those could be very, very difficult games.
Yeah.
And then you go to Phoenix, that back-to-back with the Suns, Utah, Houston to finish, and Houston's red hot. Who knows? Maybe Houston needs that last game of the year. That's not an easy stretch. I wouldn't say it's like the hardest, but that's a fairly difficult stretch of games. The way that you're playing defensively, they could fall out of the 5 or 6 spot and end up in the play-in. I just don't know. What is it going to take? Who's going to be the initiator? And what is going to change? Because it's not offensive production. They've played pretty well offensively. This is defense and mentality and approach and effort and all of those things and laying it on the line for the guy next to you. That's what they're lacking right now.
And by the way, this is a team that set home Bones Highland and PJ Tucker right around the All-Star break. Like, this is a team that even when things were before the collapse, when things were going well, still had weird things around the periphery. So keep an eye on them. I think that's
Can I give you real quick before we get off of them, one more number on them? This is really important, man. Okay. So of the 12 losses that they've had during the stretch that I just mentioned, they are 1-9 against teams that are 6th or above in either conference. Wow. 9 out of 10 games they've lost to those teams, which we would consider right now like the quality teams in the league to this point. And of the 10 wins, 5 of them are against the absolute bottom feeders of the NBA. So it's more than just 10 and 12. When you dive into it and how this is playing out, this is a really bad sign, man. It's a death knell for them right now. It's shocking. Them and the Suns kind of in the same boat right now in how we view them.
Let's move on to the Pacers because they're interesting as well. I mean, we'll watch this Clippers story and see how it unfolds, but I think it's hard to have any faith in them. The Pacers are another team that have been up and down lately. Just lost to the Lakers in LA. They had the LA 2-game sort of trip here. They get this win, though, obviously at the 133 points, and you get a nice bounce-back game from Tyrese Haliburton, who goes 6 of 9 from the three-point line, 9 assists, still below his averages, 21 and 9, still a little bit below. He's been down for the last month or so. What did you see from them in this game? And I know you've been wanting to talk about them for a while now. So what is it about the Pacers that you find so fascinating?
I just think that they're going to be really difficult out for anybody that gets them in the playoffs. One thing I've liked about them, and they've had some, right now they're playing without Mathurin, which is a big loss for them. And Haliburton hasn't been as good. He's an interesting story to me because, man, think about the meteoric rise of Tyrese Haliburton at the beginning of this season. Like, I mean, seriously, like this is all we were talking about at one point was Tyrese Haliburton and what the Pacers have found. And this guy, what he's going to end up being. And, talking about like with these mock drafts, take anybody in the league, and Haliburton's name's coming up as a guy you take like right off the bat. And I'm not saying he's not those things, but he definitely has been more normal since. Right. He really has. I mean, he's had nights where he's been great, but he's had a good share of nights where he's been below average. Yeah. And his scoring average has dropped off precipitously since that run he had earlier in the year. And so now he doesn't appear to be like this unstoppable force that's like beating you with scoring and playmaking like nobody else in the league. He's kind of come back to earth. So he's been okay. And then they're missing Mathurin. And yet they're still, I think there's something like 12-7 or last 19. Like they're still a team that's finding ways to like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They haven't hit like a 6 or 7 game losing streak. They haven't hit a stretch where we're talking about them the way we are the Suns and the Clippers. They haven't done that. They just keep coming. And that's why they're an interesting team to me because you look up, they haven't gone away. And there's a good chance, I think, that this team ends up out of the play-in. And so they don't have to sweat that. And they end up playing probably, well, it could be the Cavs or Knicks, honestly. It could be either one of those teams in a first-round series. And I think that would be a super entertaining, long series. And that's why I like talking about them right now, because no one is. And yet here they are. And I think they've got a chance to really put a scare into the Knicks or the Cavs if they got them in a first-round series.
Yeah. Let's talk about Tyrese Haliburton, because that was one of the most interesting things to me. You know, there was a lot there, but that's one of the interesting ones. Haliburton is a rare example of a player that got the full superstar spectrum. The meteoric rise, as you're talking about. So he went from, you know, if you think about the first 2 months of this year, Haliburton's star is shining the brightest. We had a conversation about him or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, top point guard, all of these different things. And it's all great. You have the All-Star game that's in your city. You're doing, you know, you get to play host. You're the center of attention. Then he hits a slump. You know, he hits a slump. He's shooting 27% from three in the month of March after shooting 40% for most of the year. He had the interview earlier in the year where he talked about how the online discourse has affected to him and how fans, you know, he sees all the comments and it's really hard to disengage from those different types of things. Usually we get a couple years, the rise, and then it's like, okay, nothing to lose. And the Pacers should be, by the way, in that zone. The Pacers this should be a nothing to lose year for the Pacers that you build off of and the pressure comes in years to come. And yet, through this slump, it almost feels like he's going through the entire spectrum. And now here he is at where we're kind of picking things apart with him. He is slumping. But it does make me wonder about players and how quickly some of these arcs can develop for some. Not all, but for some players, they fall into this circle.
It's incredible. Look, I'm going to give everybody a little refresher course on what we're talking about here. The month of November, Tyrese Haliburton averaged 29 points, almost 12 assists, 29 and 12, while shooting 53 from the field, 46 from the three, and like 90 from the line. That was his November. And by the way, they won a ton of games in the month of November. Fast forward, month of December, still pretty awesome numbers, 21 points, 14 assists. That's what he averaged in the month of December. So still like off the charts, even though his scoring came back to earth a little bit, his shooting percentages came back to earth, particularly from the three. So that's why his scoring average dropped a little bit, but his playmaking went up. So like, okay, the guy's a little bit of shooting slump. Look at the way he's impacting the game anyway. And since then, you know, month of January, 17 and 11. Really good for a starting point guard, but that's not what Tyrese Haliburton was doing. So everything now is the benchmark is what we saw of Tyrese Haliburton at his best. And that is what we're constantly going to be comparing him to. And so even when he's playing really well by NBA starting point guard standards, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a dude that was destroying people and was completely taking over games and deciding games and everything else. And he hasn't really been that. And yet the Pacers have still continued to find ways to win enough games to keep themselves where they're at. I just think that's an impressive thing to do because who knows? Yeah. Maybe he has another stretch like that, Adam, where they need him to be in a playoff series. You know, what if he goes for 25 and 13 in a playoff series? All of a sudden, he's right back where he was. I think it's in there. I don't know if it'll happen again this year, but maybe it does. The fact that they're winning when he hasn't been that, you know, to a certain extent anyway, that is very impressive to me about what this group is made of.
Does it, I'm going to push back in one way. Does the fact that he slumped with the extra attention at all make you concerned about, look, this is going to be pressure on him in the playoffs now. And that's one of the things we're wondering about. So does that make you at least wonder about, okay, and again, this isn't damning about a guy's character or this or that. It's just, this is the first time you're going to be in this spot.
Completely.
You know, and so does that make you look at Tyrese Haliburton and this team and say they might be in for a rude awakening about how much pressure comes and how you have to handle it?
Well, what you hit the key for me. See, I'm not saying that he definitely will revert back to that early season Haliburton. I'm saying he could, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he hasn't been in this situation where in a playoff series, particularly against the two teams I mentioned, are two of the best defensive teams in the league. They're going to have great game plan against him. They're going to have all kinds of personnel to throw at him. The Knicks and the Cavs, they're going to absolutely battle him, fight over screens, pick him up in transition, like all of this stuff that wears you out over the course of a series. We're going to learn a lot more about Tyrese Haliburton if he ends up in a 7-game series with one of the two teams I just mentioned. That's when you're going to know a lot more. But for now, I can't say he can't do what he did earlier. I don't know. Let's see. I think the possibility is out there. But you're right. We haven't seen him on that stage. That's not an in-season tournament that really meant nothing in the big picture. The playoffs are a different animal. Let's see him when he needs to be great. Can he be? Can he raise his level to what his team requires? That's what we're dying to see about Tyrese Haliburton.
Another note I have on the Pacers that I find interesting, every time I watch them, the team and the second unit in particular has so much faith in TJ McConnell.
It's amazing.
And I say that as like, not all backup point guards have the faith of their team. It's like, okay, this is a group effort. Now he organizes that group, or whenever he's on the court, sometimes it's staggered or what have you. He organizes it, but organizes it in a way that everyone listens to him. And that just stands out when I watch them.
He's had an incredible career. You're talking about maximizing your talent, your size, everything it took to get to this level. TJ McConnell's done it. I saw it for years in Philadelphia, live when I'd be in that arena, going to games, and the impact he had, and even just getting up to like run to the scorer's table, the reaction that he would get because everybody was so excited to watch this guy. And, a city like Philly, like blue collar city, man, they relate to that so much. They relate to guys like that. Even if you're not putting up big numbers, doesn't matter. They know for a fact, the fans, you can't fool them. You're giving us every single thing you have every time you step on the court. Instantly become the fan favorite. And then on top of that, you're also having significant moments in big games. Man, here you go. Now you got like legendary status, which is really what he achieved in Philadelphia. I watched it.
Right.
And now I don't know that he's necessarily legendary status in Indiana, but he's a very popular player. And there's no doubt his teammates connect to him. He went on a little run last night in the second half where he hit a couple of buckets, hit a three completely unguarded. They were daring him to shoot it. And he's got a kind of awkward looking delivery from out there, and he towed it up and he made it. And like the reaction of the guys on the bench told you all you need to know, how much they pull for him and they have confidence playing with him. It's a good point on your part.
What else stands out to you about this team? I just want to give them their due. So maybe from this game, or just because I know you've been watching them lately.
I still think that, there's still more there to figure out with Haliburton and Siakam. Siakam was fantastic last night, man. 31 points. He was, and his energy and his relentlessness, and he just keeps coming at you all night long, is a quality that they needed. They needed his talent length on the wing. I still don't necessarily know that Haliburton and Siakam have figured out completely how to be a nasty tandem. That's a work in progress, and I think there's more there for them. That's another reason I continue to watch them to see growth in that area.
Well, it's going to be fascinating for both of these teams, kind of going in different directions, with the Pacers right now holding on to that 6th seed, albeit by one game over Miami and Philadelphia, and then the Clippers just plummeting. They've been the top 4 seed for most of the year, and here they are last night falling to the 5 seed with the Pelicans overtaking them. Even just that, just if you get the 4-5 swap, that's huge for the Clippers to not get home court advantage and then to go face a very hungry and red-hot New Orleans Pelicans team. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, there's more teams to talk about. And if you thought we were hard on the Clippers, we're going to talk about the Phoenix Suns losing to one of the worst teams in the NBA, the Spurs, without Wembanyama. We'll get to that one, and also Boston Celtics collapse. Does it mean something, or does it not mean anything at all on the other side? First, we're going to tell you guys about Manscaped. The episode is brought to you by the spring cleaning champions of the world, Manscaped. This season, make sure to groom your carpets and the drapes with the leader in below-the-waist grooming. Clear out the winter bush with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and watch your confidence bloom like the springtime flowers. Embrace the season and join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our special offer. Go to manscaped.com and use code ALLNBA for 20% off plus free shipping. The 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next generation skin safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little bit off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. It also has that LED light. It works in the shower because it's waterproof, so it makes it very convenient for you to Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code ALLNBA at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code ALLNBA, ALLNBA at manscaped.com. Also want to tell you guys about DraftKings Sportsbook. The thrill and excitement of March Madness is here. We've got the round of the Sweet 16. By the end of the weekend, we will have our Final Four set. And DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook app, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any college basketball bet. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code ALLNBA, same code, ALLNBA. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code ALLNBA. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or in West Virginia, visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 and over. Age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.co/bball for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
Back here, segment 2 of the All NBA show. We appreciate you watching live. Throw us a like button if you have not already. You can hop in the chat, send questions, send super chats, whatever you want. Legler will answer them live on the air. We are going to be live Wednesday and Thursday this week, not Friday, so a little bit of a different schedule. So you'll be joining us tomorrow as well. Legs, I was just thinking last night when I was seeing the slate about how in March, there seems to be a disproportionately high number of games between one contending team and one tanking team. And they make for really bad games where it's really lopsided because two teams have different goals. And yet, last night, the tanking Spurs go on with the air quote contending Phoenix Suns and get the win. And my note, and I know you went really hard on them a week and a half ago, the Suns, that is, you went really hard on them. But in a week and a half, they've somehow gotten worse, not better. This was the most nonchalant performance I've ever seen from the Phoenix Suns. And down the stretch of this game, they looked like the win was just going to come to them. It was going to fall in their lap. They were going to get a win, and that was that. And it did not happen because Jeremy Sohan drains a three-pointer in the clutch to put them up. And the Phoenix Suns were unable to convert on their looks in the final possession. All right, what stood out to you about this one?
Now I'm actually angry at myself for unloading on them the way that I did on that particular episode you're talking about, because I wish I had saved it for today, because then I could have I could go at them with double barrel, because what I watched last night was an abomination. I'm going to give you an analogy. This is a true story. I was coaching AAU circuit one time. We were at a tournament and I was in a restroom in this gym, and it was like a large restroom, and so I couldn't see the entire room. And I heard a coach who I knew the voice to be a coach who I had coached against before. So we were getting ready to play this team. And I heard him introducing himself to players and giving them a jersey. So, hey, coach, whatever, nice to meet you. And they're about to go play a game. This is kind of what was going on at AAU. And it still goes on in some circles at AAU. The reason I bring that up, Adam, that's what the Suns looked like last night. Five guys that just met each other. They literally looked like that. Nothing they did offensively, not one thing was difficult for their opponent to guard or to deal with. The irony behind this game is this isn't like the Boston-Atlanta game where Boston was up 30, got careless, got distracted, took their foot off the gas, all of those things. And then the Hawks just shot lights out, and they were unbelievable. They outscored them by 24 points in a 5-minute stretch to get back into that game. It's not what we're talking about. The Spurs weren't very good offensively at any point in this game. They still made a couple important buckets. Like Vassell had a nice little run.
Yeah.
Keldon Johnson had a little stretch where he hit a few. And then Sohan got to the line and hit the big three. But it wasn't like they were scoring every time. They only scored 104 points. Everybody for Phoenix was playing. All of their guys were playing. And they did nothing to force a reaction defensively where they would have to communicate, where they would have to do anything complicated in terms of effort to figure out how to guard them. It was, we talk about your turn, my turn basketball. This was the epitome of it. They barely made more than one or two passes on any possession in the second half of this game. And when they did, it usually got deflected or stolen. This was simply a case of their offense being labeled make shots. Like, that's not a great set to run, but that's what they did. And you alluded to it earlier in this clip about the Clippers. Phoenix Suns epitomized that last night. It was disgusting the way that they played offensively and just their overall morale and their like joy for doing what they're doing. It was very bizarre to me, Adam. This team just continues. The more I watch them, the more I realize it's embarrassing to call them a threat. It just is, because they don't look like they care enough. Why should I, as an analyst, care about them when they don't seem like they care very much? And this is, look, I like Frank Vogel a lot. I really do. I like him personally. This is something he's going to have to get control of, man. He's going to have to put more of his imprint on what, because I know he's smarter than that. Put your imprint on how you want them to play offensively and mandate it. Don't just sit there and watch a good show. And when these guys come down and want to play this way offensively, because they have no shot to beat any of the good teams in the Western Conference if this is how they're going to play. It was awful last night. The Bucks game was all about effort. It was a joke how bad they were in that game to give up 140 points without Giannis on the floor. This was not all about effort. This was mostly about complete lack of understanding of what good offense looks like. That's what it was to me. And allowing a team in San Antonio who didn't even want to win the game probably going into the game.
Right.
And they end up winning it by accident because you're that bad offensively.
So I think I've referenced this on the show before, but it's something I always come back to. And that is a quote when KD, it was either in his last year with the Warriors or his first year in Brooklyn, but he had this quote about the team basketball that the Warriors played. And he said, that stuff is all good and cute in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, but when you get to the conference finals and finals, you need ISO ball. And I remember, there's a kernel of truth in what he's saying. Basketball is a team game and an individual game in this really interesting mix, and you need both. But the phrasing of it, especially coming off of the heels and what the Warriors represented with team basketball and how they work together and coming off the heels of those finals, I just remember thinking, he doesn't get it, and that is wrong. He learned the wrong lessons from his time there, and everything he has done since individually, in my opinion, has been an expression of that philosophy. And so when you look at the Suns and you said, where are they going in the clutch? Where are they doing? They're doing exactly what he told us 5 years ago was important. Just get the ball to your players and let them do their thing. That's not basketball. That's a portion of basketball. That's some of basketball. It's very important. I don't know if there are championship teams, many championship teams that could win without having 1 or 2 guys you can just give the ball to and get a bucket. It's really important, but it's not the only thing. And this Suns team to me feels like an expression of a philosophy that it is the only thing, and it's being proven to be a wrong philosophy.
You know, it makes me wonder sometimes about certain guys that you coach. I mean, Devin Booker doesn't seem to fall into this category because I think he's willing to move without the basketball. I think Bradley Beal moved without the basketball a lot in Washington. Kevin Durant's never really moved a ton without the ball. He's very decisive and efficient in what he does. He makes really quick decisions and he attacks you getting into his moves. He's not going to pound it, but he's not going to do things that involve movement that's simply for the betterment of that possession, even if he's not the guy involved. That's not really who Kevin Durant has been. I think the other guys kind of played more like that throughout their careers, but I saw none of it last night. Absolutely nothing they did. And here's what I'm talking about. The beauty of basketball and the hardest thing to accomplish as a coach, because you hit it. You have to strike a balance between individual and team. It's a very hard thing to do. That's why I think it's such a hard sport to coach. But the beauty comes when you can get guys to understand that something you're asking them to do has no correlation with them getting a shot on that possession, but it's important. This cut, this screen, this angle, these things are important for us because it's going to lead to something good for someone else potentially on this possession. When you get guys to buy into that and they do it of their free will, and look, winning helps that. If you can get them to do it early and you're winning games, they're more likely to continue to buy into that. That is when you've captured it. And that is the exact opposite of what I was watching last night.
100%. And this really manifests itself in the clutch. So one of the things about KD that I've often talked about is he is susceptible to really aggressive traps up the floor. And in the last possession of the game, he gets the ball and he starts playing with it. The clock's going down. I think they're down 2 points and he starts playing with it and they just send a double to him 40 feet from the ball. And you could tell it bothered him, almost like he was like, they're doubling and I have to get rid of it. And he passes it over to Beal and nothing comes of the possession because there wasn't a setup. There wasn't a 2-man game. There wasn't this or that that's going to punish you for sending the trap. Instead, they trapped. They got there early. He had to get rid of the ball. Now it's a scrambled possession. And I just look at it. And when we talk about what teams, the Celtics are a way better team, but they fall into this category sometimes in the clutch of, well, if you're just trying to ISO, what's option 2 off of that? And are you sure you can always get to it? Last night was a perfect example of KD playing with the ball for 15 seconds. They send a trap, and by the time he gets rid of it, there's no time to run anything else off, and nobody is in situation to take advantage of it.
Completely agree with that. Man, and I look at Bradley Beal. Let's not leave him out of this. I look at Bradley Beal, and you look at this was a guy that got beat up repeatedly because of seemingly his desire to want to stay in Washington in a mediocre situation because his name always came up. Was he going to bounce? Did he want out? Was he going to demand out? He never did. People beat him up, weren't sure if he was a winner. So now he makes this decision. He's going to go to Phoenix, and he's going to pair up with these two guys. And then I look at, like, the way he's used. Bradley Beal has 37 points in his last 4 games. I mean, he's been outscored by Grayson Allen, practically Bowl in that stretch. This is Bradley Beal. So like you look at a guy like that and you say, man, is he enjoying this? Is this fun?
Right.
Like, here's the thing, by the way, would it even be fun if he scored 37 points in 4 games and they won all 4 of those games, right? And they're smoking teams. I'm not sure, because that's a massive sacrifice. And that is why you look at guys that have done it over the years and like gotten into a certain lane. Like, I'll give you examples. Chris Bosh in Miami. This dude was averaging 24 points a game in Toronto as the go-to guy. He went down there and completely had to transform his game to fit because he wanted to win. And he played hard defensively. Kevin Love, look what he was doing in Minnesota. They weren't winning. Goes to Cleveland. Different story, different lane. Not going to be utilized that way. You're going to have some moments, but not for the most part. And you buy in. Like Bradley Beal, like I'm sure he's trying to buy into this. Is this fun for Bradley Beal? Being on a team that feels listless, that doesn't really feel like they've got competitive desire, like you're going to win anything this year, and you gave up that much of who you are and your independence as a player. I just think that's an interesting, I'd like to get into the psychology of what Bradley Beal is thinking and feeling every day when he leaves the arena and goes home and he's with his own thoughts. Like, what is this something that you really thought you needed to sign up for? No, it's look, they're a mess, man. There's no other way to describe it. It's hard to forget what we're watching right now. It's just hard to get it out of your head when you start talking about and ranking these teams in the West and trying to figure out who's who. Phoenix Suns are kind of telling us who they are, and it's not going to be good enough.
42 and 30 now, and they're at Denver, at Oklahoma City, at New Orleans, Cleveland, Minnesota, New Orleans, Clippers, Sacramento, Minnesota. None of those games are easy. You might catch the end game at Minnesota, at Sacramento. Maybe those teams are locked in and you get lucky that you get a gimme or two. But every single game I just mentioned there is a playoff team, many of them on the road, and that's how they have to finish the year. And by the way, they are currently sitting – did they fall last night into the play-in? They're the 8th seed. So they are currently 42 and 30 in the 8th seed, a road first-round play-in game at the moment with just a brutal schedule. I mean, look, it's sink or swim time for them to either coalesce and really get through this adversity and come out stronger. But
hey, listen.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I don't know if people realize this. They played them back-to-back.
Yeah, that's always hard.
In the same place. Yeah. So they played them on Saturday. Yeah. And they scored 131 points. They beat them by 25. And then they had a day off on Tuesday. And look, Riverwalk's fun. It's not Vegas. Okay, this isn't Miami nightlife on the Riverwalk. I went to the Riverwalk every year for 2 weeks during the NBA Finals when the Spurs were there, like every year. Yeah. I was there covering it, and I was at the Riverwalk. Yeah, they got some good spots. The Riverwalk. Yeah. This isn't, come on, man. This isn't Paris. So what are you doing, man? Did you come back, 2 days later and you play the way you played last night, man? They're just, they're a mystery. They're a real mystery. The Clippers are a mystery. And they're who knows? Maybe they come back and make liars out of me, out of anybody that's doubting them right now. But there's just other teams in the West I like more because they're more consistent with what they're bringing.
The last game we're going to talk about today, the Hawks beat the Celtics 120-118. And something of a familiar script here, 44-22 after the first quarter for the Celtics. They get up big. They lose the next 3 quarters, and in the second half, they get outscored 64-44, including 30-22 in the fourth quarter. We've talked about this before, Legs, but the Celtics can freeze up a little bit when they're holding onto a lead late. They try to waste the clock. They run some ISO. It gets a little bit ugly. So I don't know if this is more about that. Okay, this is more the Celtics in the clutch. The one issue that maybe is plaguing them because they've been so great and so dominant all year, but there's one box that just doesn't feel checked. Or the Celtics have locked up the number 1 overall seed, more or less locked it up, and it's hard to maintain focus. We saw this from Denver last year, who, oh, by the way, went on to win the championship. But down the stretch, when they had secured the number 1 seed, the focus wasn't there. They didn't play their best basketball, but it turned out it was much ado about nothing. So which one is this?
Man, I'm not too worried about it. The one thing that I think you can glean from this is when the Celtics go through a stretch where maybe you can cut into a lead against them or you can build a lead against them is when they go ice cold from the 3-point line. And that's not out on a limb. That's a lot of teams in this league, but they're more dependent on the shot than anybody else.
Right.
And so that's why there was a numbers I was given this morning. They were 0 for 16 in the last 3 quarters inside of 10 seconds on the shot clock from 3. So they weren't capping off possessions where they had to work a little bit and you got down into single digits on the shot clock. You ended up with a quality 3 that you were knocking down. They do that a lot, and they really bury teams that way because it's demoralizing when you have a good defensive possession and somebody hits a 3 at the end of it. They did none of that over the last 3 quarters. This is an interesting game because the headlines, the 30-point lead got away. And then you're talking about the end of the game. You're right, because then it became a one-possession game at the end, back and forth. And that's when they super slow down everything, and that's another problem for them at times. This game turned in the last 4 minutes of the second quarter. Yep. They're down 30. They go into the locker room down 18.
Yeah,
that's a huge difference, man. And even Tatum, who missed the shot at the buzzer at the half, kind of looked defeated going into the locker room. They just scored 74 points and they're up 18, but he knew where they were. And now it's okay. It's not comfortable, certainly for the Hawks, but we got to come out and do a little more work and put these guys away. Then they come out in the second half, and just like that, they get it to 3. They outscored them by 24 points in less than 6 minutes. Yeah. End of second, out of the locker room to start the third. I think for me, that points more to distraction, complacency, lack of killer instinct against a team that you think that in a million years is not going to come back in this game. That's what I think it is. If you want to get technical and say, hey, man, there's something there about the way the Celtics play late and the number of threes they take, yeah, I guess that's something if you want to look at them and what they could be susceptible to. I agree with that.
I think it's human nature that when you all these guys are hyper competitors, but you still have to have the games mean something. And the truth is that these games don't really mean anything for Boston other than rhythm. And no matter how strong and focused you can be, it still is a scale in your mind, just knowing, okay, this game isn't for anything. And I agree with you. That run at the end of the second quarter, that is such a mark of a team that is having a hard time closing out quarters. That's like you focus. That's, winning teams, they always close out quarters. That's a team that's a little bit unfocused, and I can't blame them. So I'm with you. As much as they lost in a very interesting way to me personally, that the end of that game, getting them clamming up, so to speak, at the end of the game, that's very interesting. I'm going to disregard it, and I'm going to probably disregard the next 10 games for the Celtics because I watched Denver last year and they came back from it.
I agree. And by the way, I don't know if you saw this or you saw this anywhere. It was given to me by research at ESPN. So prior to last night, teams that got up 30 in a game this year, 152-0.
Wow. That was the first one?
First time, 30. We've seen 20-point leads disappear a lot, and it's more prevalent than ever because of the dependence on the three-point shot. Both ways, by the way. You get up 20 and you hit a cold stretch, you're taking too many threes, and the other team gets hot at the same time. Boom, 20-point leads are gone. Happens all the time in this league, almost feels like on a nightly basis. Somebody does that. 30, you can see by those numbers, it's a different animal. You get up 30, you're not losing, except for last night. But the Boston Celtics, ironically, the best team in the NBA, had it happen to them by a mediocre team. That's kind of crazy.
Our last story here, Legs, is an ugly one. We kind of knew it was inevitable that it would happen with the integration of sports gambling, the legalization of sports gambling across the country, and the integration with the league and how popularized it was becoming, that it was inevitable, it seems, that at some point a player at the college or pro level would, in some sport, would get caught up in a scandal. Well, it came to the NBA, and it came with Jontay Porter, a very interesting player to be caught with this because, one, he's a G League player on a G League contract. It's almost a perfect storm. He's well known because of his brother being Michael Porter. And here we have the situation where he is under investigation from the NBA because on 2 separate days, the largest bet to come in, or the largest winning to come in from DraftKings Sportsbook, our presenting sponsor, the largest bet came in on Jontay Porter unders. It's very strange. Not common for the big bets to come in on bit players, low players. In fact, I think the line was 0.53s, came the under, and in a game where he came out for an illness. So I think there's a lot of smoke. There's no fire yet. We'll wait to find out the final verdict, but there's a lot of smoke here that Jontay Porter either was gambling himself or was giving intel to somebody that was gambling on his behalf that knocked him out. This is a huge story. You knew it was going to happen. And I expect Jontay, if he's proven to be guilty, to get the lifetime ban. I think they're going to make an example of him. And two, I feel like this might be a little bit of a watershed moment for the NBA and for all of these sports leagues to have to look and say, we knew this was a risk. Now we know it's happening, or at least has happened once. What do we do about it?
Completely agree, man. You can't overstate how big a deal this is. This is because here's the thing. Anytime you're watching a sporting event, and we know gambling is very prevalent now, right? It's everywhere. But when you're watching a sporting event, if there's anything that gives an indication of predetermination, right, even something this minor, a role player, a two-way player who's just a bit player going to play, maybe 10 minutes, if that, in a game,
right,
not going to have a major. And by the way, what he did, if it turns out to be true, and he's connected to this, where he basically, and it doesn't seem like maybe he bet, but information was given to people who did place bets that he was going to not play very many minutes in these games to make sure, to guarantee that the under on the prop bets for his stats were going to hit. And there's no better way to do that than to take yourself out of the game. So we need more information on that. Why did he come out of the game? Was it his call? Of course, nowadays you just go to a trainer and say, hey, I got poked in the eye. They're going to shut you down for 2 weeks the way the league is now. So you don't even have to make the call. It's taken out of your hands. But in one game, he played 3 minutes. In one game, he played 2 minutes. And in both cases, the under on his stats spiked the betting right before those games, like to where it raised alarms and red flags. Like, whoa, that's way too much action on a prop bet, particularly for a role player. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So we're going to find out more information, Adam. Like, was he involved? To what extent? Who are these people that bet this money? Where'd they get that information? And here's where it gets dicey, because if you start to think, okay, great, hey, they caught him. It's great, they caught him. But then, you know what happens when something like this breaks, Adam? People start thinking, well, were there other instances that weren't caught? Like, what is going on? And also, there was a good point made. Brian Windhorst, my colleague at ESPN, made a good point. These are the kinds of guys, by the way, more susceptible to it. Guy's on a 2-way contract. I think he's making $400,000 this year. The risk reward for a guy like that, it's higher to do something like that if he's involved in it than a dude making 10, 12, 15, 18, 35, $40 million. Okay, number one, it's just going to be harder to pull off because there's too much attention on those guys. And the risk reward's not there financially, because there are limits to what you can even place on prop bets. You're not going to get filthy rich off the prop bets in one night. So these are the kind of guys, if he's connected to it and someone was placing bets maybe on his behalf, where you can't maybe have a paper trail to him, but there was an agreement where he was going to get money. And we don't know any of this, by the way. This is all speculation, what I'm saying right now. But clearly, this is not coincidental that this happened twice within a period of 2 months, where he barely played in games where he was expected to play more. And there was all kinds of action on his unders, on his statistics across the board, which, by the way, were low numbers anyway. Like, attempt a 3-point shot was one of the unders. That's
crazy, man. That's crazy.
Hit. Well, how do you guarantee to do that? Don't play, because if you're out there and you're open and you're naked, you're going to have to shoot that ball. So, and by the way, real quick, just to inject a little humor in this, I told somebody, if this existed when I played, I would have taken the prop bet everything I had on the over for my 3-point attempt. I would have jacked it. I would have jacked the shot every time I touched it, because then it's a win-win situation, Adam. It's a win-win situation for everybody, right?
This is part of why this is so egregious, is you not only think about how corrupt it can make things, you start to get the audience questioning, just what you said, how many people are doing it, so that it's really damning. But then there's this other layer of, if you're a teammate of Jontay Porter and this comes out true, you're going, dude, you're ruining the game for us. Like, we're out there competing and giving our all, and you're out here purposefully not taking shots you were supposed to take, or checking out of games you could have played in to ensure you're under. So,
by the way, this is also, Adam, you think about what's going on of these different storylines, not only the Shohei Ohtani story, which we still don't know,
would be way bigger
than that. I think there is more shoes to drop there. But remember the scandal with the Temple basketball team that was questioned about some of the weird wagering that took place right before their games. And there was all kinds of stories and rumors swirling around about that. I haven't heard anything more about that, but that was a story for a couple of days. And because these leagues, NCAA included, like they're all embedded with these betting and gambling platforms. This is now something that we're going to be living with forever now. And so this is so important that the league get this right. And you're 100% right, by the way. If they find there's any connection that he did this purposefully and there's people that were making money off of this, and obviously some of that money's flowing back to him at some point, it's a lifetime ban. He'll never play in the NBA again.
Yeah, they'll have to make an example of him, and he's a guy you can make an example of because, again, I'm not trying to disparage Jontay Porter. I actually like Jontay Porter's game a lot. I think he could have had an NBA career here, but because he's not that important to this health and survival of the league, that he's a perfect guy for you to say, if there is fire here, if there's not just smoke, but there's actual fire, a perfect guy to make an example of and to go as hard as you possibly can in the consequences of this and hopefully send a message to everyone else not to do this. I will say,
real quick, I just want to ask you, because you're in that market, has there been anything about, has Michael Porter Jr. had a comment on this? Or obviously that's going to be a bunch of microphones in his face talking about this. This is his brother. Has there been anything in Denver related to this and Michael Porter Jr.? Has he said anything?
So the story dropped last night before the game, and Michael Porter declined to speak to media last night. So I'm guessing because of how quickly things happened. And first of all, I understand Michael Porter. I think athletes need to speak to the media. They have an obligation. But I do think with something like this, when the news just dropped, he probably hadn't even talked to his brother by the time that game was being played last night. So I do think that there is a grace period where you say, okay, let a guy kind of speak to everyone and get on the same page before forcing him to go out there and talk about such a big story. But I do think those questions are coming for Mike, and they'll probably happen, I'm guessing, at this next game. So a distraction for him nonetheless. I will say, look, sports gambling, and we have obviously DraftKings is our presenting sponsor here. Sports gambling is, there's a lot of layers to it. I will say that this idea that because there is sports gambling and people talk about it on, say, a pregame or a postgame show, that doesn't mean that it is okay for players or that the league is guilty now of a player betting on it. When you welcome that in, you invite the risk. But I don't see the correlation to saying, oh, because of this, then players should be allowed or what do you expect, this or that. It's something the NBA is going to have to deal with. And maybe there are things that the NBA and their television partners have to decide, okay, is this sending the wrong message, is doing the wrong thing? They might have to look in the mirror and see that. But I don't see the fans saying, what do you expect because you have this as a partner, you're going to get it. I don't love that correlation. The league has lots of vice partners, including alcohol and food and everything else. And I think we all understand there's a separation there between.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's grown-ups in the room. I agree. I completely agree. Completely agree with that. The problem in this story, again, is people start to wonder, is what I'm watching not a random series of events in which none of us know the outcome. And I'm not saying he fixed the game. It just had no bearing on the outcome of the game, most likely. But still, the fact that any aspect of the game is not genuine, that's where you have a real problem when it comes to, legalized gambling. And that's what the league is obviously going to try to nip in the bud.
We have 4 games tonight, and they're all great ones. Warriors at Heat. The Warriors desperately need it. What the Heat desperately need them doing. Both of these teams kind of in the same boat. You've got Lakers, Bucks, no LeBron. I'm so disappointed LeBron's not playing tonight in this one. You've got Thunder, Pelicans, which I think is going to be incredible. And then you have Mavericks, Kings, which is a great game. So we have 4 great games tonight. Tomorrow's show should be absolutely fire, Legs.
I didn't even look at the schedule tonight until you just mentioned it, man. That is an awesome night. And I got wall to wall work tomorrow at TV, then you and I hooking up back up again tomorrow. I can't ask for a better slate than this, man. I will be dialed in. I wish LeBron was playing. You're right. I think of the 4, Mavericks Kings is the one that I'm going to be most locked in on.
Why?
Because of how well the Mavericks are playing, and the Kings are one of those teams that have not gotten much attention. They're still a very good team. They have identical records.
Yep.
And so let's see. Like if the Mavericks go in there and beat a team that's a good team, that's also a high-power team, and the Mavericks go in there, man, they control that game. They win that game, and they take care of business. And I'm talking about like handily win that game, control the game. That's going to be a statement win again for the Mavericks, who I continue obviously to talk about a lot because I'm kind of riding this right now because I really do feel that the Mavericks can have a chance to be that team. That's the last one to take on Jokic and the Nuggets.
Probably lots of Mavs talk on tomorrow's show. We got 5 super chats. I think that's a new record. Let's hit them all, Emma. Cedric Exquisite says, "No, Adam, I don't hate you. I just love to poke." Yeah, he's always talking trash in the comments. That's why he references that. But all jokes aside, guys, do the Nuggets have a chance to beat the 2013 record of 57 wins? Let me know. So I don't know if you know this, but the franchise record legs for wins in a season for the Denver Nuggets is 57. They have 51 right now with 10 games to go. They'd have to go 6-3.
7-4. 7-4 breaks it, right?
I think 7-3 at this point, but either way, yeah, it's going to be really close. They're going to have to be put. I think they are going to be pushed to go for it because they're going to need that many wins probably to secure the 2 seed or maybe even the 1 seed. So I think they're going to push for it. And I think they're going to get it. They're playing incredible basketball right now. I don't know if you saw this, Legs, but Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic both rested on Saturday night at Portland, and the Nuggets got the win. Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon rested last night against Memphis, and Denver got the win. So they've kind of sneaky been able to rest guys over the last week. And now they play a very tough 5-game stretch here where they got the Suns, they got Minnesota, they got the Cavs. But Denver should be somewhat rested going into that stretch, and they've been playing great.
And they need 7 wins. I'm looking at their schedule. So here's the guarantees I see. I see guarantee San Antonio, guarantee Atlanta, guarantee Utah, guarantee San Antonio, guarantee Memphis. That's 5 right there. Teams that really aren't even trying to win right now. So where are the 2 other guarantees coming from? Well, one of them's going to be Wednesday night against Phoenix, the way they look. So that's 6. Then you just need to find one more. The key is going to be, and I think you're right, because they're so bunched together, there won't be separation enough to have your spot locked in until you're probably down to the last 1 or 2 games of the season. So they got to keep playing, man, and they're going to keep that momentum going. So I think there is a good chance they break that club record.
Let me ask you this. If you get to the final game of the season and it's for the record, but it doesn't mean anything, is that like, do you go for it?
No,
is that important?
Not that record. Not a club record. No chance. If that was, they got a chance to win their 74th game of the year. Yeah, you probably go ahead and try to get that because that is all-time historic. But not, especially when, look, if it was 59 was the record and that's your chance for your 60th win, because 60 is kind of a magic number in the NBA, man. You win 60, like you had a absolute, dynamite year. Right, that's the number. 57 to 58. I don't think that would matter if you go into the last game and you can't move in the standings.
Legs, it would matter to me. That's a lifelong Denver Nuggets fan.
Well, then I guess you better. Then I guess you better see if Mike Malone will suit you up and you can go out there and do what you got to do. And by the way, I don't know what your numbers would be, but I'd be looking at those prop bets. I'd be looking at those prop bets. I'll tell you right now. And I'm not saying I'd take the under. I'm just saying I would look at those prop bets on you for sure.
I'll tell you what the prop bets would be: 0.5 points, 10 or more turnovers. That would be the line. All right. What other ones we got here, Ebba? Cedric Exquisite again. He says, fear the blue and gold, not the Warriors. LOL. There you go. Nuggets fan. What else we got? Psycho Blue says the Suns and Clippers are having a contest to see who can let down their fan base harder. It's a tight race, dead heat.
I'll answer that. It would be if these 2 teams flame out and they either get eliminated in the play-in or they get eliminated in the first round, light work. It's the Clippers. I think it's the Clippers, man. I don't know. And the Phoenix fan base, I don't know that, are they, and I've even talked to people in Phoenix about this. Are they on that level, man, of diehard, passionate fans? And I don't necessarily think the Clippers fans were either, but they were when they put this super team together. It did change the dynamic. So I think the Clippers fan base actually would probably be more outraged.
Man, that's wild. I don't know. I might even go the other way on it. I think the Suns fans, it would feel like the end. I guess for both teams, it would feel like the end of an era. But maybe for the Suns even more, it would just feel like, oh my God, we went all in for this. All right, what else? Let's run through these. Frank says, will we see any dramatic roster shakeup with these light-built super teams if they're sent home early in the playoffs, i.e. Clippers and Suns? We kind of just referenced this. I think for Suns, you go all in, and if you have a first-round exit, man, that's so tough. Do they have the flexibility even to make a move? That one's tough. I think with the Clippers, you would almost have to. With the season they had where they had a hot streak and then come down, those guys just signed extensions. I think you'd have to.
I'm going to answer that question. I felt like the tone of the question was, do you think in general, is there going to be a change in mentality of how to build teams? If teams like this flame out and they collapse at the end of the year and they're a total disappointment, and my answer to that is no, because the mentality of the players isn't going to change. They are going to still want all this freedom of movement, right? The grass is greener to a higher extent on the other than it's ever been with players. Right. They're constantly looking around, and it's too tantalizing for front offices to turn down if they think they have a chance to get one of these guys. So I don't think that is going anywhere. Now, maybe teams like that winning might be, because I wouldn't I wouldn't describe necessarily Boston as a super team, would you? Even though they added Drew Holiday and Porzingis, their two best players have been there for a long time. Yeah. So it's different adding pieces when your two best players have been there that long. I certainly wouldn't describe Denver as a super team with Jokic and Murray and playing together this whole time. But some of these other teams, they kind of how they came together for a very short period of time from different places and collected in one city. And if they keep coming up empty, they're going to continue to lose. But I don't know that the methodology will change, because I think the players want to continue to move around.
I think it's very hard to build a team with harmony and connectedness, and very easy to build a super team. And super teams get you really close to there, but they don't get you all the way. And I think that's why it won't end, because there'll be a lot of teams that say, hey, we'll find the harmony. We'll build the culture. We'll do that after we get these guys. And then they find out they were wrong. All right, what else? We got a couple more we got to run through. Legs got to go. Psycho Blue says the NBA has already had problems with referees affecting games with betting. Now refs have sponsors. Is this Porter situation really that shocking? The Suns Kings beg to differ. Referencing some old school ball here. It's shocking again. I don't know that it's so shocking.
No,
but I
man.
hope that
not shocked at all.
But it's not shocking. But I do hope the NBA and really NFL, all these leagues are going to have this problem. I hope they all really look at this. And I don't know if it's just a really big penalty that creates deterrence. I don't know what you have to do, but you have to scare players into never even thinking about testing this right now. And unfortunately, Jontay Porter is going to be the example. Brought it on himself, though, it seems.
So I'm not shocked at all, because this is such a huge part of our society now. I'm not shocked by it, but I can't overstate how important this is. Yeah. This is a big, big deal that the league has to get a grip on right now. And if it turns out it's just a two-way player like Jontay Porter, that's the best case scenario for the league. Imagine if this was a star player that this happened to. Now you'd have a whole different scenario on your hands. So I think the league is going to do everything they can to get as much information as they can, find out what was going on here. And if it turns out it's as nefarious as it sounds like, then they're going to make an example out of Jontay Porter that's going to resonate throughout the league.
Yeah. All right. What else, Emma? Victor says, which lower seeded team do you expect to make it the farthest? What team might surprise you? This is a longer discussion, but if we just give a quick name, you just throw out one team that's a lower seed that you expect to go the farthest.
What do you want to define lower seeded? What does that mean?
Below top four, I'm guessing.
Okay, so you're saying plays on the road right off the pick. Yeah. Okay. Then I would say my prediction would be the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. I think it's Dallas, except Dallas is right there where they might match up with Denver in the first round, which if that's the case, I think that'd be really tough. They could beat them, but I'm just saying that'd be a really tough
They gotta avoid that at all costs, whatever it takes.
And don't count out the Miami Heat, man. We're looking forward to them. All right, I think that does it. Emma, is there anything else? Is that it?
Nope.
All right, there we go. All right. Great show today, Legs. Lots of conversation, and I'm excited for tomorrow because these games are going to be absolute great ones. Any final thoughts?
That's it, man. No, enjoy tomorrow, everybody. Come back right here, a rare Wednesday appearance for Adam and I.
That's right.
Look forward to talking to you after a great night of games.
Everybody hit that like button for us on the way out. We'll see you tomorrow.
All city like the mayor.